Well, great to see everybody here on this beautiful, beautiful Lord's Day. If you're visiting with us, we're so glad that you've decided to make assembly with the Christians here at East Shelby a part of your Sunday. Please let us know if you have any questions. We would love to get together with you at any time and study and talk you through whatever you're going through. If you've got a spiritual need of some kind, we want to be here for you. We want to be a resource for you. So just let us know. Fill out a visitor's card if you've not done that yet, so we can reach out to you at some point this week. Just find out how you're doing and to thank you for being here today. If you've got a Bible handy, and there should be a Bible handy because there's a whole bunch of them all around the room, turn to the book of Psalms. We're going to go to Psalm 75 this morning. Psalm 75. That's in the Old Testament. The book of Psalms is basically smack dab in the middle. And we're going to go to Psalm 75, although we will look a little at Psalm 74 later in the lesson because there's a neat connection between these two Psalms. So Psalm 75, put a bookmarker there. Follow along, and I'm going to go ahead and read the psalm in its entirety. It's only 10 verses, so it's not long. And then we'll go back and we'll make some application kind of verse by verse as we go through this lesson. So Psalm 75, I read out of New American Standard Translation. Verse 1. We give thanks to Thee, O God, we give thanks, for Thy name is near. Men declare Thy wondrous works. When I select an appointed time, it is I who judge with equity. The earth and all who dwell in it melt. It is I who have firmly set its pillars. I said to the boastful, do not boast, and to the wicked, do not lift up the horn. Do not lift up your horn on high. Do not speak with insolent pride. For not from the east, nor from the west, nor from the desert come exaltation. But God is the judge. He puts down one and exalts another. For a cup is in the hand of the Lord, and the wine foams. It is well mixed, and He pours out of this. Surely all the wicked of the earth must drain and drink down its dregs. But as for me, I will declare it forever. I'll sing praises to the God of Jacob, and all the horns of the wicked He will cut off, but the horns of the righteous will be lifted up. Now, this is not the only place in the Bible that we see this phrase, the horns being lifted up. In fact, there's a number of different references here, one of which we've already looked at in 1 Samuel chapter 2. But as you peruse the Bible, you find numerous times that the horn or the horns have been lifted up. Psalm 92, verse 10, but you have exalted my horn like that of the wild ox. I've been anointed with fresh oil. Psalm 148, and He has lifted up a horn for His people. Praise for all His godly ones, for the sons of Israel, people near to Him. Praise the Lord. Hannah said in 1 Samuel chapter 2, my heart rejoices in the Lord. My horn is lifted up by the Lord. Psalm 112, verse 9, He has distributed freely. He has given to the poor. His righteousness endures forever. His horn is exalted in honor. So what does the Bible mean most frequently when it talks about the horn or the horns being lifted up? Well, it's actually a reference to cows. The cows' horns being lifted up. Now, there's two ways that you can look at it. That's why I put two very different pictures up here. On the one hand, you will see the Lord lifting up somebody's horns, or literally lifting up their head. We sing a song sometimes, A Shield About Me, that the Lord is the lifter of my head. And that gives the sense of somebody perhaps in their shame or in their humility, contrite before the Lord, and God in His mercy and His love comes and says, you don't have to bow your head before me. And He lifts the head up and says, you've been forgiven, you've been exalted, you've been lifted up. And it is God who lifts your head and lifts your horn. On the other hand, there are other times that the horn is lifted up, like we've read here in Psalm 75 that we'll get to, where somebody may, in their insolent pride, lift up their horns. And that's the idea of the proud bull lifting up his head like this. And You ever seen the way that bulls are like that, right? You ever seen a bull in the field or maybe watched a bull or something? And bulls are it's a lot of strutting going on, a lot of pride and arrogance. There's nothing that they're afraid of. They'll stand up to anything, and they lift up their horns like this. And so there's two senses then that the horn is lifted up. Either you're lifting up your horn in arrogance and pride, or God is lifting up your horn because you've been humble and contrite before Him, and He will exalt you. So that's what that phrase means. And it's not a phrase that we use a whole lot, to be sure, but I think it's important to understand that background because in Psalm 75, there are 3 different references to the horn being lifted up. Do not lift up your horn on high in verse 5. Verse 10, all the horns of the wicked He'll cut off, certainly gives the sense of an emasculation of some kind, right? If you think about a bull having his horns cut off. But the horns of the righteous will be lifted up. So to really understand why the psalmist is talking about horns being lifted up and horns being cut off, we really need to consider that idea in its context. So let's go back and reconsider here verses 1 through 3. And we'll make some comments as we go, some application as we consider what this psalm has to say. It is, as the subtitle says, a psalm of Asaph, and it is set to a tune called Do Not Destroy. It's the same tune that you find in Psalm 57, Psalm 58, and Psalm 59. Now, I don't know what Do Not Destroy sounds like, but it certainly is an evocative title. So it says in verse 1 again, we give thanks to Thee, O God, we give thanks for Thy name is near and men declare Thy wondrous works. I think you have a responsibility that if you expect God to be on your side, you need to be on His side also. God is not just someone that you call in a pinch or an emergency. He's not like the tech guy at the office, like, oh great, the computer's crashed. Somebody call the tech guy. And he finally gets to get off his seat and come do something for once. That is not God. If you want God to back you up and be on your side, you've got to be out there declaring His wondrous works, praising Him, thanking Him, giving Him glory and credit for all that He has done for you. I think that's kind of what verse 1 is getting at. Now in verse 2, you'll notice there's quotation marks there in our English Bibles. And so translators suppose that this is God talking. And I don't see any reason why to disagree with that. And so in verse 2, the words of God Himself saying, when I select an appointed time, it is I who judge with equity. You have to leave judgment up to God. You have to leave judgment up to God. Now I know I never throw my kids under the bus in a sermon. So I'll speak in hypotheticals. Let's just say you've got a bunch of kids in your house, maybe 4 of them. No, I really am not going to throw them under the bus. It's very typical behavior for kids is when you have one sibling and another sibling, and one sibling does something wrong or violates the other sibling in some way, hurts them, kicks them, pushes them, takes something from them. What is almost always the gut reaction of the sibling who's been wronged? What do they want to do? Get even with them. And then, as it always turns out, and wouldn't you know it, it's always the second kid that gets caught by the parent, isn't it? And they get in trouble. Well, I wouldn't have done it if she hadn't done it, if he hadn't done it. Oh, he did it first. She started it. What I love about God, one of the many things that I love about God, is that God, through the Scriptures, has essentially said, I'm going to go ahead and take that whole thing away from you. You're just not allowed. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord, like Paul quotes from Romans chapter 12. You are not allowed to take your own revenge. You have got to leave judgment up to God, for He alone will judge in the right way. He is the great judge of the universe. From Him pours forth both love and truth, both justice and mercy. You have got to leave judgment up to God. Why? Because we're bad at it. Look at the word that he uses there. It is I who judge with what? Equity. And I understand that the word equity is kind of a word that's been impregnated in political language now, but that's not what he's talking about as far as political stuff goes. He'll judge with fairness. We often don't. We hear something about a friend, a brother, a sister, maybe even an enemy, and we always jump to the worst possible conclusions about that person. Then we spread gossip, or because of the conclusions we jump to, we go and get our own revenge. We get payback. We go and undermine them, say something nasty about them to the boss. God says, I judge with equity. I am the Lord. I am the God. Vengeance is mine, and I will repay. And so again, like Paul said in Romans 12, never pay back evil for evil. You're just not allowed. You're bad at it. You're horrible at it. Kind of like, if you've tried to play the clarinet for like 5 years and you just haven't gotten it yet, your whole family will agree, you're just not going to play the clarinet. Just stop. You are awful at revenge, every one of you. You are all terrible at revenge. You're all terrible at judgment. So am I. And so God says, leave judgment up to me. I'll judge the world in equity. I will judge the world in equity. Verse 3, the earth and all who dwell in it melt. It is I who have firmly set its pillars. Isn't it interesting to have this contrast where on the one hand he talks about the earth melting, but then on the other he says, I've firmly set it on its pillars, which means that God is in charge of both sides of that. He's the creator of the universe. He'll be the destroyer of the universe. He'll lift up mountains. He'll tear mountains back down. He brings a beautiful, pleasant, sunny spring day, and he also brings the hurricane and the tornado. Leave it up to God because God alone is qualified. Essentially, he's saying this to say, I am qualified for judgment. Have you ever built a planet? Are you capable of destroying it? Then in that case, why don't you go ahead and leave judgment up to me? Because I'm the only one qualified to bring that judgment down. Now, there's a reason why I said I want to go to Psalm 74, just briefly, just a little tiny bit, okay? Because I think in a lot of ways, Psalm 75 is a response to Psalm 74. Now, they're both, as the subtitles say, written by Asaph, or maybe one of Asaph's descendants, the sons of Asaph, right? Written in the name of Asaph. So they're both written by, if not the exact same author, then a family of authors or a group of authors or people writing from a similar perspective. And Psalm 74 is a psalm about destruction and carnage and God, when are you going to do something about this? Read just a couple of verses here, just to demonstrate what I mean about that. He says here in verse 3, turn thy footsteps toward the perpetual ruins. The enemy has damaged everything within the sanctuary. Thine adversaries have roared in the midst of thy meeting place. They've set up their own standards for signs. It seems as if one had lifted up his axe in a forest of trees, and now all of it is just carved work. They smashed with the hatchet and hammers. They've burned thy sanctuary to the ground. They've defiled the dwelling place of thy name. They said to their heart, let us completely subdue them. They have burned all the meeting places of God in the land, and yet we don't see our signs. And he says in verse 10, how long, O Lord? How long? Now I know that Psalm 74 is its own self-contained message, but I have a hard time not seeing that Psalm 75 acts as a response to that. When you look at the world crumbling around you, whether it's the world literally, or society, or culture, or just your life, your little part of this world. When your family's falling apart, when your culture is falling apart, when your community's falling apart, and you say, how long, oh Lord, are you going to just sit by and let everything fall apart? It's all burned, it's all crumbled, it's all failing. Psalm 75 comes in and God says, why don't you go ahead and leave judgment up to me and trust me on this one? I destroy the world, I can create the world anew. I can lift up mountains, I can tear them back down. I will judge. Your job is to trust me and keep the lamp lit of my word. And I'll handle everything else. Let's go on to verses 4 and 5. I said to the boastful, do not boast. What I like about that, there's a real simplicity to that, isn't it? There's just, when it comes to sin and righteousness, what I love about God is God just calls a spade, and he doesn't he doesn't kind of like dance around it like, we've got to be careful, we don't want to use words that are offensive. I don't want to be too direct with them. No, to the boastful, I said, do not boast. I think there's a refreshing clarity that we get from God that you don't see in the human mind, right? The human mind muddles everything, and we try to find excuses, and we come up with clever jargon or euphemisms for things. You've got a really bad temper. You say, I'm just very passionate. No, you've got a bad temper. That's what it is. You're a real lusty person. You say, listen, I'm just a man with very strong cravings. No, you're not. You're lustful. I have a lot of self-confidence. No, you're proud. You're arrogant. I believe in independent living. No, you're self-willed. I'm an intellectual. No, you just don't take simple answers at face value. To the boastful, God says, stop boasting. God can look into your life, your soul, your mind, Hebrews chapter 4, differentiating between thought and intention, soul and spirit. And God can look at your life and he knows exactly what is wrong with you and exactly what's wrong with me. And he doesn't tiptoe around it. He confronts me and says, Ryan, you're lusting again. Stop it. Ryan, you're arrogant again. Stop it. Ryan, you're being selfish again. Stop it. You're being mean to Rebecca. Stop it. God doesn't tiptoe around it. To the boastful, do not boast. And to the wicked, he says, do not lift up the horn. Right? That's that arrogance. That's the bull. The bull's in his pen. There's a reason why they keep the bull separate from all the other cows. Got to give that guy space. But he looks at the wicked and says, I see you there. I see you in your nice green pasture. I see the way everybody's scared of you. Everybody walks around you on eggshells. I see the way that you go through life thinking you're indestructible. Nobody can touch you. You're the biggest animal on the farm and you got the horns to show it. I see you there. I see you. Do not lift up the horn. Do not lift up your horn on high. Do not speak with insolent pride. Now, some translations may translate it this way, but I looked up what that word insolent pride means. It's interesting. It's one of those compound words. It literally means stiff-necked. Stiff-necked. Do not speak in a stiff-necked way. Now that's a great image, isn't it? The idea of stiff-necked. Like, let's say you're trying to drive a team of oxen or something, right? Because that's what we do on a regular basis, right? But you're trying to drive a team of oxen and you need them to go a certain way, maybe just a straight line down the field, or you've got to turn it around. And you're trying to pull the oxen one way, and that ox is going this way. He's stiffening his neck. You're pulling this way, and he's pulling this way, stiffening his neck. You ever tried to pick up a dog that doesn't like being picked up? Right? That's what dogs do. When you try to pick up a dog that doesn't like being picked up, it goes It stiffens its neck. That's the idea of being stiff-necked. You're proud. You don't want to be picked up. You don't want to be told where to go. You don't want to be driven by some, you're back there with the reins or something like that. You want to do your own thing. Make your own way. Say what you want. Do what you want. You are stiff-necked. Now, this is not the only time that this imagery is seen in the Scriptures, being stiff-necked. God uses it in Exodus chapter 33, in fact. If you go back to Exodus 33, he talks about the way that Israel was a stubborn people. Again, some translations may say stiff-necked. New American Standard says, "Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, for I will not go up in your midst, because you are an obstinate people. You are a stiff-necked people, lest I destroy you on the way." I mean, I know that's serious, and God is He's being serious here, but I've always found that to be kind of a funny thing. Like, I want you to go ahead and go up to the land flowing with milk and honey, but give me some space from you, because if I go with you, I promise I'm just going to destroy you. I mean, if I am around you anymore, I will destroy you. So it's best just to give me some space right now. You're a stubborn people. You're stiff-necked. You're obstinate. Other verses, Deuteronomy 9, verse 13, Nehemiah 9 and verse 16, when Nehemiah is going through kind of the condensed history of Israel and what kind of people we've been this whole time. Nehemiah doesn't mince any words. He talks about them being stiff-necked as well. Stephen, also in the New Testament. Remember in Acts chapter 7, when Stephen is preaching to these folks just before his fate is sealed in Acts chapter 7. And in verse 51, this is the ultimate conclusion to a sermon. Listen, you know that your sermon really hits home when they pick up stones to stone you to death. That means, like, come forward as we stand and sing is on the way. He says in verse 51 of Acts 7, "You men who are stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ear are always resisting the Holy Spirit. You are doing just as your fathers did." Okay, well, what does this look like then? Being stiff-necked. Because it's easy to identify it, but we want to make sure that we're making a practical observation here about this. It can be simple things, life things, day-to-day type things. Not learning to break a habit of someone. You have some bad habit and your family calls you out for it, and you just continue to do it over and over and over again without learning. At some point, and I understand that habits are hard to break, but at some point you transition from, "Oh, I forgot, I don't realize I'm even doing it," to, "I'm just going to keep doing it because at this point I don't like people telling me what to do." Like there's a tipping point at some point where the simplest things, you start to do them on purpose because you know that your spouse won't like it, your parents won't like it, because whatever. That's kind of on a small scale. Don't you think that's a little bit of what being stiff-necked is? I think there's also being stiff-necked in much larger things when it comes to sin. And realizing that a sin is destroying your life and a sin is bringing you down, and yet you're just I'm going to just take this to the end. I'm just going to ride this wave until the end with this sin. I know what it's doing to me. I know how it's hurting my marriage. I know that it's alienating me from my brothers and sisters in Christ. But listen, I've just gone this far in this sin. I can't stop now. God has a lot of mercy. Isn't that the understatement of the year, isn't it? God has a lot of mercy. God is described as long-suffering. That's a great compound word, isn't it? To suffer long, to be patient with someone for a long time. God is long-suffering. But at some point when you've tipped from, "I didn't even realize what I was doing, I'm sorry." When you tip then to, "I know exactly what I'm doing, I just don't want to change." Don't be surprised when God also tips from long-suffering. "Listen, I understand that it's hard. Psalm 103, you're but dust. I'm understanding. I'm merciful." Don't be surprised when God also tips over to, "So you just want to be arrogant about that? Then fine. Be arrogant. but the mercy's gone. The grace is dried up at this point. Remember Jesus told a parable about a man who owned a garden, and there was a tree in the middle of that garden that never bore fruit. And the guy who owned this garden got so sick and tired of seeing this tree that wouldn't bear any fruit that he told his gardener, time to just rip it up. I'm done. I'm done. It's not doing anything. And the gardener said, well, just let me see what I can do. Let me kind of build a moat around it and water it and fertilize it and see if I can cultivate it, give it one more year. And if at the end of that year, if it still isn't bearing fruit, then yes, I agree, we'll rip it up. Isn't it interesting that we look at that as a parable about God's mercy, as we ought to, that God gives you that extra year, God gives you that time. God patiently, because of His Son Jesus Christ, who loves us so much and is so merciful and so long-suffering, God will be merciful and patient with you. And that's what that parable is about. But the other part of that parable is also, at some point, does the mercy end? Like, at some point, the Father and the Son, the owner and the gardener both agree, like, all right, we gave him time. We tried. At this point, he's just being stubborn. Let's go to verses 6 through 8. For not from the east, nor from the west, nor from the desert come exaltation, but God is the judge. He puts down one and exalts another. For a cup is in the hand of the Lord, and the wine foams. It is well mixed, and He pours out of this. Surely all the wicked of the earth must drain and drink down its dregs. Verse 6, from the east, from the west, not from the desert. There's kind of this idea of like flailing desperation there. You ever meet people who are like the get-rich-quick schemers? They kind of bounce around from like idea to idea, from investment to investment. Hey, I have a buddy. I have a buddy of mine. He told me about it. It's a sure thing. And then it doesn't work out. And they go, well, that's okay. This other guy. I got a lot of pots going on the stove right now. Not from the east, not from the west, not from the desert. It's like, I'm going to try everything to find exaltation. I'm going to put everything into college. I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to graduate with honors. And then I'm going to get a master's degree. And then I'm going to get a PhD. And that's going to be my thing, my defining characteristic, the thing I hang my hat on my life. The most glorious thing I ever accomplish in my life is going to be getting that PhD. And then we get that PhD, and like Ecclesiastes is still true. So we go like, okay. I'm gonna learn like a hobby, like a new skill. I'm gonna do a thing, and that's gonna be my thing. And then Ecclesiastes is still true. And then, family. And then I'll live vicariously through my children who are more successful at sports than I ever was. Not from the east, not from the west, not beyond the desert. You don't find exaltation in those things. You find desperation. You try everything in the world like Solomon did in Ecclesiastes. Anything, everything, just to find meaning and purpose in my life. And it all fails me. And God is reminding us here, if God is not the one exalting you, you will never know what exaltation really is. Exaltation, by the way, is just a fancy word for being lifted up. Right? Lifted up somehow. For God is the judge. He puts down one. He exalts another. Sorry. You can't beat those odds. You can't game the system. Then he uses an interesting phrase here. And write these other references down. We don't have time to look at all these other references, but he says in verse 8, for a cup is in the hand of the Lord, and the wine foams. This is a picture of judgment, by the way, that we see quite a bit in the Scriptures. The idea of God pouring out His cup of wrath on people, and the red wine foams. And the imagery, of course, is like the obvious connection to blood should not be lost on us. But he says it is well mixed, probably the idea of mixed with spices, and so that it's not just the wine, but it's also real spicy wine, like very strong flavored wine, okay? I'll give you a good example. Like there's coffee and then there's like Turkish coffee, okay? You ever go to Casablanca? Diane loves that place, Casablanca on Poplar. They have a thing called Turkish coffee. It comes in a little itty bitty tiny cup because, boy, it packs a punch. And it's infused with cardamom, and so it's like very, very strong. It'll knock the socks off your feet. That's essentially what this verse is saying is God's wrath, his judgment comes like a goblet of well-mixed, highly spiced, foaming wine. And when his judgment comes, he says, you're going to drink it all. I like the idea also here, surely all the wicked of the earth must drain and drink down its dregs. God, listen, God doesn't just allow you to suffer consequences. God makes sure that you suffer consequences of your wickedness. And when you've had a taste, they say, ooh, I don't like those consequences. God says, no. You don't get to have a taste. He tips the cup like this and says, drink it up. All the way to the bottom. Got to get the stuff at the bottom of the cup too. Now here's the practical application. Whether in this life or in the judgment, one way or the other, comeuppance comes for the sinner. It is inevitable. It is going to happen. You are going to have to drink the cup of God's wrath, and he will pour it out, and he will shove it in your face, and he will say, drink it all the way down until there's nothing left. But the really beautiful thing is that doesn't have to be our fate. In John chapter 4, as well as in John chapter 7, Jesus talks about how when you drink of him, his water, the fountain of living waters, he says, you get to become a fountain of living waters also. You drink of the water that I am offering you, the water, the pure living water, and you yourself will become a fountain of living waters. And I love the contrast between judgment is portrayed as wine well mixed and foaming, and God says, drink it up. You asked for this. You wanted to be an adulterer? Here you go. You wanted to be a thief? Here you go. You wanted to murder? Here you go. You want to make life all about your money and your junk and your possessions? Here you go. But on the other hand, of salvation, he says you can drink this up and then you yourself become a fountain of living water to other people. And you'll always be satisfied. Never, as he told the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, never to thirst again. So let's bring this to a close now. Verses 9 and 10. But as for me, I will declare it forever. I will sing praises to the God of Jacob. All the horns of the wicked he will cut off, but the horns of the righteous will be lifted up. I cannot help but think about Bully for Bugs. This is one of my favorite, easily top 3 Bugs Bunny cartoon, when he gets stuck in the ring with the bull. And there's one scene in particular where the bull's horns get stuck in a wall, and he pops them off and he looks over the wall like this with no horns on. That's what I imagine in Psalm 75, that God will cut off the horns. It is the idea of being emasculated. This bull, this big, strong bull that does what it wants, goes where it wants, fights anybody that it wants, and he swings. Oh, I also lost my glasses. Swings his horns around like this. You know what God does to that? God scoffs at that. God laughs at that. And he saws the horns right off. He takes away from the wicked the source of their insolent pride, and leaves them unable to do anything, hornless. But on the other hand, he gently places his hand beneath the head of the humble and the righteous. He lifts up their head. He lifts up their horns. Sennacherib, remember him? during the time of Hezekiah, Sennacherib showed up at the gates of Jerusalem and he sent Rabshakeh and said, you go tell those people, surrender now and I'll be merciful. I've defeated a lot of other people and I've defeated their gods as well. You think your God is any better than any of the other gods I've defeated? Sennacherib's army was destroyed by one angel from the Lord and he went home in shame, only to be assassinated by somebody from his own court. How about Nebuchadnezzar? Nebuchadnezzar in his insolent pride was told by God, you need to learn a thing or two about humility. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to go ahead and think that you're a cow. Strangest story in the Bible, probably, aside from the talking donkey with Balaam. And for a time, Nebuchadnezzar really thought that he was a cow. And he wandered around naked with dew on his back, eating grass, because he needed to be humbled. He needed to have his horns cut off so that he could learn who God really was. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God so that he may exalt you at the proper time. 1 Peter 5, verse 6. Pride brings a person low, but the lowly in spirit gain honor. So you have an opportunity right now, as we offer at the end of all of our assemblies together, to make your life right with God, to obey the message of the gospel. Jesus put it very simply in Mark 16, verse 16, that he who believes and is baptized shall be saved, but he who does not believe shall be condemned. Isn't that essentially what we're talking about? The humble versus the proud. The one who pursues righteousness versus the one who pursues wickedness. And there is a definite and inevitable end to both of those roads. So choose your road today. Lower yourself before God that he may lift up your horns this very day. Whatever spiritual need you have, please let it be known by coming forward as we stand and sing together.